So let's talk about methods of execution, how we create sculptures. And speaking of execution, this would probably be the most terrifying. I'm not sure if it's the fact that those are rocks, the zipper, or the actual human teeth, but it seems like the sort of thing that you want to avoid. Anyway, let's talk about the actual methods of execution. First, we have subtraction. This is generally used with wood or stone sculpture. It means exactly what you would think. We're taking away material. Now, the tricky thing here is if I'm taking away material, especially stone and wood, I can't add material if I make a mistake. So basically, if you make an error, you're done, or you have to rethink the piece. This also means that sculpture done in a subtractive method is generally seen as a higher form of sculpture than many other forms that we'll look at. Then we have additive techniques. These are used for wax or clay, and usually when I talk about using wax or clay, these are studies for other forms of sculpture, just like watercolors or drawings are studies for paintings. And what we're doing here is we're actually adding material. Now, this is much more forgiving because if I make a mistake, I can take away the material or add additional material without too much of a problem. I'm not going to complicate things too much. Then we have construction technique, where I'm taking smaller elements and building them into something larger. So here I'm not making the telephone cable in this case, but I'm using the telephone cable to construct something else, in this case, the human form. And oftentimes construction techniques will be mixed media. So we're going to have, say, telephone wire plus maybe wood or a heavier metal armature or something like that. Then we have substitution. This is where we're taking one material and we're going to change it for another. So in this case, I would sculpt out of wax, in this case, a dolphin, and then I would create a mold from that wax sculpture to create my finished silver dolphin. How does that work? Usually through the lost wax method. This is how we create those life-size bronze sculptures that you see, for example, at Gettysburg. What you do is you basically build an armature, and then you're going to rough out the form in clay. And at this stage, all I'm doing is creating the basic form. I don't want to create all the fine details. What I'm then going to do is cover the whole thing in wax. The wax will be as thick as I want the final metal to be. And then I'm going to carve the fine details into the wax. So details of the face, the eyes, the hands, etc. The whole thing is then covered with clay and heated. And what will happen is that wax that I added back up here in step 3 will melt out, leaving a void. And then I will pour bronze into that void with the clay still in the middle. And then I can remove the mold, usually breaking the mold, around the bronze. In the process, oftentimes you leave a hole or you drill a hole somewhere, maybe in a foot, and you hit the bronze, and of course the clay inside is very brittle at this point, so it will shatter and break and come out. And then you add your details. The same applies, incidentally, to jewelry or other things. If you want a custom piece of jewelry, what they will do is they'll create a wax piece in 1:1 scale. And then once it's approved, they'll cover it with your clay shell, they'll melt out the wax, and they'll pour in gold, silver, platinum, whatever it is. So same basic technique on a much smaller scale. Then we have manipulation, where we're taking pliable materials and we're not really changing the material, we're simply altering its form. So for example, clay being thrown on a potter's wheel. So here, he's not changing the clay. The clay itself is exactly the same. He's simply manipulating it into a different form. So these are the forms that we generally see with sculpture. Almost every piece will fit into one of these types.